dragging me all the way out of bed into the refrigerator. Opening the refrigerator. Huh?
Where is she doing?
School. She's in kindergarten. She's been in, yeah, she's a mainstream in kindergarten. She's been in school.
Okay, she'll take care of it.
Now she's in daycare for spring break. Good deal. I'll work with her really well.
Not a moderator.
59, you're on at 12 o'clock. They're gonna start with whether you're ready or not. Do some introductions, some welcomes, hello, we're waiting.
This is Anne Marie, the moderator speaking. We have about 4 users dialed in at this time. Did you want to start on time or delay a few minutes?
Yes, the speaker, he said he cannot hear us at this time.
Oh no, now I'm back.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Susanna Lang. I work for the I work for the Office of Equal Opportunity and Civil Rights for the Affirmative Employment Group. Today we have Aaron Allen. He is going to be discussing Section 508 in detail. And it's a very important subject, and the Disability Employee Resource Group wants everyone to pay close attention to Mr. Allen's comments. And if you have any questions, we're going to open the phone lines and periodic throughout the presentation. So no further ado, Mr. Aaron Allen.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. Checks in the mail. Welcome, everyone. I'm hoping everyone can hear me in the room and on the phone. My name is Aaron Allen. I am the CMS Section 508 Coordinator out of the Office of Information Technology. Today I'm going to talk about an overview of Section 508, and I'm going to focus on what Section 508 is and how it impacts us at CMS, and also talk a little bit on how, your impact as a manager plays a role. Okay, so we could go to slide 2, please.
You're there, sir.
Okay, now slide 2, this slide talks to us about what Section 508 is. It is the Rehabilitation Act 1973 as amended, and it is designed to make technology available for people with disabilities. And it's also designed to make information that is derived from that technology, like documents and presentations, things of that nature. Now, specifically, it was designed to eliminate barriers in information technology, open new opportunities for people with disabilities so that they could obtain employment in the workforce, and encourage the development of such technologies by vendors and developers and corporations. One of the final reasons behind Section 508 is to give members of the public equal access to the information that we at CMS use, or we in the government. But CMS is a major player because of our demographics and the beneficiaries that we serve. We're one of the most unique agencies in the government as to how we focus our benefits to the general public. Okay, slide 3, please. Now, what is information technology? Information technology, it includes computer hardware, software, hardware being like fax machines, laptops, copiers, things of that nature, software, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Adobe. Software or documents also refer to the documents distributed via email or through SharePoint or any other mechanism where it's soft copy materials. That information, the information system used, the platform must be accessible for people with disabilities. Anything that's actually procured with our dollars for CMS usage on our CMS infrastructure must be Section 508 compliant, or must have a mechanism in place to assure that persons are able to access the information within that system. Okay, slide 4, please. Now, slide 4 is just hammers home what I've said before about the information technology. It applies to web content, websites, any of our desktop software like our Microsoft Office Suite or Adobe products, any of the documents that are generated from that software, any presentations or training material that's also included, any e-learning or anything that's placed on our learning management system. If you're dealing with documents for calculations, if you're dealing with spreadsheets or things of that nature, that information also must be 508 compliant. And of course, any emails that you distributed. The slide also depicts hardware devices that must be compliant or must be adapted for compliance for usage by people with disabilities. Slide 5, please. Now, slide 5 shows us what categories Section 508 has been developed for. For whom does it apply? Now, it's for people with visual disabilities, hearing, cognitive, and mobility. Visual referring to people using screen readers, screen reading technology, or magnification software. Hearing, we have TTY, TTD. We also have new technologies, closed captioning, and other avenues for communicating with people who are deaf or have hearing issues. Now, cognitive disabilities refer more not to technology, but to the design of information within technology. What I mean by that is, for many with cognitive disabilities, the information has to be depicted in a manner that allows frequent revisiting of that same information. It has to be laid out in a structured manner that allows for people to read and capture that information that is available. And it has to be structured both in language level or language type, as well as if you have interactive multimedia within an application, that has to be structured in such a way that people who have cognitive issues can interact with your application. And of course, with mobility, this deals with location of items, such as the height of the copier machine, the reach of how far a person needs to reach to print or fax a document. Now, assistive technology also can be simple technologies like desks that raise and lower, monitor stands that can be adjusted for viewing, things of that nature that would also help people who have mobility-related issues. Okay, slide 6, please. Bless you. Now, many people often have a debate on accessibility versus usability. You can have documents, you can have applications that are meeting the standard of Section 508, but still not meeting the standard of what is considered usable by the user. When a person with challenges regarding accessibility, using their assistive technology devices, if they're claiming something is not accessible, most of the time they're referring to the usability aspect. There may be aspects, for example, of Adobe Forms, where it's usable, the forms are accessible under the standard, but tab order may not be correct. form field elements may not be properly addressed or out of what's called out of order, and that makes completing those forms a little bit challenging and refers to the usability factor. That doesn't mean that they're not totally inaccessible. However, it could refer to the usability factor of that application, which thus to them would make it inaccessible. Slide 7, please. Who is responsible for Section 508? All of us. All of us as CMS employees, our contractors, if we're dealing with grantees, any programs that they administer using our dollars must have Section 508 components related to the aspect for which they are providing the service. So it's across the entire spectrum for CMS and throughout the HHS umbrella. It's a federal umbrella actually, but HHS provides us with our guidance for Section 508 compliance, for document compliance, and for what covered entities should Section 508 apply to. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this slide is a great takeaway slide. It's a slide to help you make sure that your information that you're producing is Section 508 compliant. Now, we have links to the HHS checklist that provides you information on creating documents for Section 508. There's also guidance on the HHS website for creating forms in Adobe for Section 508, the HHS Section 508 policy, and the HHS used product assessment template, which we'll get into more. That's all available through that website. CMS also has a comprehensive Section 508 web page. We also have our own checklist, if you'd like to refer to those. We have information regarding the validation process. Our web page includes a list of clearance officers within each component, so that if you have questions, in the future, you can go to them first, or you can come to the Section 508 coordination mailbox. Slide 9, please. I was asked to make this a separate slide because of its importance and its, I don't want to say newness, but it is a recent topic that has come up on our radar, and it revolves around SharePoint. Now, SharePoint is a file repository like a shared drive. It's a distribution method that allows people to communicate and collaborate on documents or projects or things of that nature. The documents, the content held within SharePoint is subjected to Section 508 as documents on the shared drive or documents for distribution, because SharePoint is nothing more than a file distribution mechanism. It's similar to email or similar to a shared drive. I look at it as a combination, and applicable Section 508 guidance is applicable to this particular method, meaning the documents themselves that are not in draft, documents that are for distribution, are to be 508 compliant. If they're in draft, you're working on it as a collaborative working group, Section 508 applies as applicable. We don't require you to have draft documents 508 compliant until they become more finalized or become documents for wider distribution. You can have draft documents that are being circulated for review. Those documents are not the same as documents that you're collaborating on, still building, still structuring, still adding content. within your work group. So there are some variances and some things to note there regarding 508. Also, with SharePoint structure, things like the calendar or other mechanisms in SharePoint, Section 508 it applies to the development and use of tools within SharePoint. So that's something that you have to keep aware of as you're utilizing tools or having tools developed or procured for you for SharePoint usage. Okay, next slide, please. Now, slide 10 deals with procurement. If you are someone who's purchasing or either through contract or just software, you want to make sure that the vendor, developer, agent that you're working with is aware of Section 508, can provide you with documents attesting to their Section 508 posture for that application. And if not, we have a link to a Section 508 product assessment template. You can provide them with that link or provide them with a template for them to complete. If you have an application being developed, going through the XLC process, working on a project of that nature, they will provide you with that information to make sure that the product assessment template for CMS is completed and reviewed. It's what we will test against when that time comes for your software or your application to be tested. Okay, now slide 11, please. Now, as managers in CMS, OIT asks that you, within your component, look at the posture of your application for Section 508 compliance. Have everything in your posture of your purview been tested? If you're in HR, or your HR system's 508 compliant. If you are in another area of CMS that's dealing with Medicare or the MAC contractors, are their systems 508 compliant? Or has remediation been obtained or an exception been granted? Because it is ultimately the manager's responsibility for that application within that component to make sure that the accessibility questions have been asked and answered, meaning, are you compliant? If not, what is your plan to address the needs of people who may need to access your information? Do you have what's called a remediation plan? Or have you been granted an exception by the CIO that allows you to utilize this application but be fully aware that there are risks involved with that utilization, which is what the exceptions process is all about. Any purchase orders that come through must have Section 508 language in them. There's specific guidelines and guidance from both OAGM and from OIT regarding what that language should look like. You want to make sure that your contracts have that language. The premise of that thinking is that the contractor developing your application should know 508. They should be responsible for making sure that the deliverables that they provide to you meet Section 508 standards. And if not, there are consequences for not adhering to the CMS Section 508 requirements. As managers, we ask that you support the roles of your 508 coordinators in your component. Many do not know the full scope of what is asked of their clearance officers. It's a little more than just other duties as assigned. There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of collaboration with contractors or cores or other developers on making sure the artifacts are correct. And there's a lot of assistance that they provide within your component regarding remediation of documents or remediation of content that is to be posted. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of detail-oriented work that perform. So we ask that, give them that support that they need. Reach out to them, find out what they need if you can, and just make sure that others in your component understand that their role is vital to supporting the agency's mission for assuring Section 5 compliance and access to all our information technology for the public that we serve. It's more than just a law. For CMS, it's more than our policies are governing, and HHS is telling us. We have a constituency group that is different than other octaves under HHS because of the populations that we serve. Slide 12, please. Okay, this is this slide should on your screen say changes coming. I'm not going to talk in detail here, but I am inviting all of you to the June Tech Topics for OIT, where we will cover more in-depth information on the new Section 508 standards. In March 2017, the Access Board, which is the governing body for accessibility throughout the government, released new standards regarding Section 508. It is known as the Section 508 refresh. Those standards take effect March 2018. And for most part, it centralizes the focus of Section 508 to the document or the application being used. It's a little cumbersome to explain. The new charts that are coming out will have better explanations, but the changes will impact CMS both on how the developers are to measure Section 508 and how CMS will be testing for Section 508. So those are the two biggest impacts with the new standards that take effect March 18th. And there'll be information about the new standards coming out again in June, and OIT will be doing lunch and learn opportunities for people to learn and have questions about the new standards and how they're impacted. Okay, slide 13, please. Okay, the risk of non-compliance. Well, potential risk of not complying with 508 are lawsuits, time and expense of remediating applications or documents. You may have employees who will not be able to complete tasks or assignments because the information they need is not fully compliant. And then we have beneficiaries or consumers, people who utilize CMS services who may not be able to get information timely or may not be able to get information at all in order to conduct CMS-related business. This is very true if you work on the healthcare exchanges of the marketplace applications, or if you're dealing with Medicare and sending out beneficiary notices. So those are two critical aspects of our business where providing information in accessible format is critical. We want to avoid agency exposure. No one wants their name in the Washington Post or the New York Times as a litigant in a Section 508 related lawsuit, and they are happening more and more. SSA, Southwest Airlines, Amazon, Target, several large named organizations and companies have been cited for their accessibility issues and have lost, as the circuit courts have indicated that access to technology, electronic information, is as critical as access to brick and mortar facilities. So the courts have held up the plaintiff challenges and awarded for plaintiffs in most of those cases. CMS doesn't want to be one of those. We want to do the right thing coming out the gate so that we set that benchmark and be the model for HHS operatives and the government. Slide 14, please. Next slide. Now, this is just a resource slide. If you guys have a slide deck there that you can take, this is your resource slide. If you have questions, or if you have comments, please reach out to the CMS Section 518. Also, reach out to your component Section 508 coordinator. There's a list of coordinators on our website. If you follow that link, or if you send an email, if you do not have it, we can provide you with the list. But each component is to have a Section 508 clearance officer. And as managers, I urge that find out who yours is. Work with that individual if you need to. Get to know them. Stop by their desk. Maybe buy them coffee. They can be the most helpful resource in your component for Section 508 related questions. Okay, that's it for me. If anyone has questions, we can take questions now.
All lines have now been unmuted. You may ask a question verbally.
Aaron, this is Susanna. Are there certain font colors that are not 508 compliant?
Well, colors are always a challenge. Colors such as red. You have many people who suffer from color blindness. So we always recommend that we focus on less, I don't want to say, less arduous colors. So it's also colors and contrast. So if you have good contrast color ratio, if you have your dark blue on a light background or a light color on a darker background, especially for letters or words, that helps. If you're using colors such as red, you want to make sure that that is not the only method, the color is not the only method that you're conveying that information. Red is a challenge. Blue can be a challenge for some. You want to avoid things like blinking text. Blinking text can cause persons to have seizures, or blinking elements within your application. So avoid those elements also. We don't recommend, if font size, I always say a size 12. If you're doing a Times New Roman or serif font, the smallest is a 12. You don't want anything that's too small, and you don't want anything that gives like such a pictorial look that the pixels look disjointed, because people using magnification software won't see those letters the way you intend. Not that it affects anyone in the room, but many people over the age of 40 began suffering from visual degradation, and small print causes significant eye strain. It can cause misinterpretation of characters on a screen. So we always say a size 12 font size is good. Carrier Times New Roman for documents. Serif fonts for web content.
And Aaron, this is Susanna again. Also, I want to convey that it's really important that if you have charts in your document, to make sure there's a narrative of each chart, so the employee can understand what the chart is trying to convey.
You can do that many ways. If your chart, if you are incorporating your chart material into a document, you can describe that before the chart, or you can provide like legends if it's in Excel. So there are myriad of ways to provide that textual relationship to a chart or to a graph that a person would need.
Anybody have
Any other questions? Okay, everyone, this has been a pleasure. If you, like I said, if you have questions, please feel free to send an email to the CMS Section 508 team, as in your handout, or reach out to your components Section 508 clearance officer. And I hope this information was helpful.
And also, Aaron, I wanted to let everyone know that if you don't have the PowerPoint slide, please email me at susanna.lang@cms.hhs.gov, and I'll send you the PowerPoint. Thank you for your time on this important matter.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our conference call today. You may now disconnect. Again, this concludes our conference call. You may now disconnect.
Is that your house, Ms. Holly?
Thanks for using WebEx.